Well, good evening, America. It's 7 p.m. Monday, May 11th, 2020, and this is Q News Tonight. We begin right at the top of the show with breaking Q News. We have a special guest anchor with us tonight, Chef Josie, and of course, Napoleon Plays. All three of us have just had our antibody test for COVID-19, and we queue up in our breaking Q News tonight. I have tested positive for COVID-19 antibodies, which means I had COVID-19 and was asymptomatic. We're going to reveal Napoleon's results and also Chef Josie's results. But before we do that and have a conversation, we have prepared this video to show you the testing, the timeline of what has happened, and also our top 10 recommendations of what is next for COVID-19. Watch this.
Hi, welcome. Nice to see you. Josie, actually, if you want to take your mask off, I think you can.
Okay, perfect.
I mean, when it's tight around the nose, it prevents stuff from coming out. So, when we left off the other day, we were talking about the fact that after 40 days of, you had been positive on the PCR test. After 40 days, you were still positive. I think we were beginning to see already that was a test complication, that really the health department told you were still infectious and that you needed to stay away from people, but in fact, when the test is positive after 40 days, what you're most likely detecting is viral debris. Sometime after 21 days, and usually by 28 or maybe a little bit longer, people develop antibodies. But that PCR test can stay positive. You have had now several PCR tests, the nasal swab up the nose test, that were positive, and they were 40 days apart,
right.
Obviously. And you've done the correct thing, but you really only needed to quarantine for 14 days. But testing you for antibodies will show us that you have now recovered, and it's looking like those antibodies may actually confer immunity.
Just let me know, Dr. Grossman, do you think that once I receive the results back from this test and it shows that I am positive with antibodies, what exactly does that mean?
Well, truthfully, I think it means you're set to go. I mean, you should be opening the restaurant the next day, and with all the guidelines for restaurants these days.
So, Doc, just to be clear, you're saying that if I have antibodies, that I'm probably one of the safest people on the planet to be around.
I think that's absolutely true.
All right, Doc. Well, I'm excited to, learn my new results from this antibody test, and can't wait till I get that positive antibody test. Correct?
I'm hoping that's the way.
All right.
I really think that Q News has done a really incredible job, because really people want practical information, and I think with that, Q News is starting that discussion. And maybe we're not going to get everything right, because things change day to day. Yeah. But at least we're talking about practical solutions, things people can do. So I think that we can actually start broader testing. I would recommend to your viewers who are going to be seeing this, who want to get testing, that they call their provider.
In terms of the testing, you believe that this antibody test is more effective than the PCR test, which is like you mentioned the other day?
No, they have different indications.
Okay.
The PCR test is for acute infection. But once you're past that acute infection, that test can stay positive and just be viral debris. Okay. Now the antibody is going to tell us that your body developed an immune response. So that's really what it's telling us. You've had an immune response to the virus. It's looking like those antibodies are protective. We hope that they last for a long time. Those are still questions to be answered.
I feel hopeful.
Well, we're back into breaking Q News tonight at Q News Tonight, and we are going to next tell you about the best recommendations on what's next for coronavirus and the LGBT community. As you can tell from the video presentation there, we begin by first and foremost thanking Dr. Howard Grossman. He's been our medical advisor. He is here every Thursday night at 7 o'clock for Q&A coronavirus and the LGBT community. It has been an amazing opportunity for viewers to ask specific questions and concerns from our LGBT community. He has guided us through one of the most complicated last 50 days I think most of us have ever been through. We have lost one of our hosts to COVID-19, Ron Brunensky. Chef Josie tested positive. Napoleon and I tested negative, along with all of the other guests and host and production in the Happening Out television network family. And it's gone on from there. Friday, a week ago, Chef Josie tested positive again for coronavirus, and we have now taken the antibody test. So, as you are aware, Happening Out Television Network has been directly affected by coronavirus. On March 27th, as I said, all of the host and production were tested for COVID-19 because its Happening Out host Ron Brunensky is hospitalized for coronavirus.
Happening.Fun anchor, Chef Josie, then tests positive for COVID-19 and is quarantined for more than 40 days. Ron dies of coronavirus on April 27th while in a medically induced coma. On Friday, May 8th, Chef Josie, anchor Al Ferguson, and myself have the antibody test administered by Q's medical expert, Dr. Howard Grossman, to confirm why she continued to show a positive test for COVID-19.
Yesterday, after previously testing negative for coronavirus, I was shocked when advised he had coronavirus and was positive for the antibody test.
So we are now going to show you this exclusive antibody test that we outlined from the testing that Josie had in interview and Napoleon and I had. We've all taken the antibodies. So we'll begin with Napoleon. Napoleon, you have to, for us to have this conversation, you have to be able to say that your HIPAA rights are being waived so we can discuss your situation.
Yes, for this on air, for all of you, I will waive my HIPAA rights.
So, America, as you know, we all think that we transmitted in some time frame on March 25th, in Ron's presence, his last participation at It's Happening Out. We generally, in our source tracing, zero it to that point. Josie tested positive for COVID-19. I tested negative for COVID-19. Napoleon tested negative for COVID-19. 50 days later, I have taken the antibody test and now have tested positive that I had COVID-19 but was asymptomatic and never showed any signs and no one knew it until I took the antibody test. Napoleon at the same time on Friday took the antibody test, was negative for COVID-19, and 50 days later, he is negative in his antibody test, which means he has never had COVID-19 and still risk exposure.
Charming to hear, which is interesting having been around so many people that have had it. Obviously, this is still, as Dr. Grossman will say every time he's on air, this is still a science in progress. We have no idea what's going on, and I'm absolutely frustrated to hear that because it would be nice to have that, to know that you can go out and not get this again probably, or not have this as a concern. And honestly, I don't know how I could have been around so many people that had this and not have gotten it myself. Fortunately, he'll be here Thursday for us to ask a lot more questions on Q's Q&A, but that is charming to hear.
This news you're hearing live and really is confusing to all of us because at the Happening Out television network, one host, very tragic, has passed from COVID-19. Another host, Chef Josie, tested positive for COVID-19. Al and Napoleon tested negative for COVID-19. Now in antibody test, Al tests positive for having had COVID-19, and Napoleon tests negative for never having COVID-19. That's where we're at. Now finally, Chef Josie has been in quarantine for almost 50 days and has tested twice now, being positive for COVID-19. Chef Josie, before we reveal your results from antibody, you also must specifically waive responsibility of HIPAA privacy.
Yeah. So I waive my HIPAA privacy, obviously, so that we can all learn together. I share so that we can learn together, we can grow together, and we can adapt together.
Chef Josie, we add one final complication to the results. Your antibody test on Friday proves that you do have antibodies and you have recovered from COVID-19. You had COVID-19 and you are no longer an active infection of COVID.
Okay, you hear that, everyone? Do you hear that, everyone? Chef Josie has been cleared for action, active duty, okay?
Scary, now, scary.
Well, for me, not for you.
We provided recommendations. Just a quick dialogue before we move into the rest of the show, but let's talk about the ramifications here. There's going to be a lot of argument from people. A quick rundown. Can you still be infectious over 21 days? At the maximum 30? The best science, and according to Dr. Grossman, is no, you cannot. He was one of the first cases in Broward County to contract COVID-19, and he has recovered from it carrying the antibodies. He basically has said in the interview in your testing that if you had if you tested positive for antibodies, you're one of the safest people on the planet in the COVID-19 pandemic. I am now also in that category. Napoleon is not in that category.
I'm a danger.
The doctor and the current medical science recommends repetitive testing if you do not know whether you're positive or negative for COVID-19. And after you have a test that is positive and you've gone through your self-quarantine process or hospitalization, medical attention, that you aggressively pursue antibody testing, because it will show if you have antibodies developed in your system. The best science opinion so far is that you do not contract COVID-19 a second time. That is the best science available. There are many, many people that are distributing misinformation in social media in varieties of different ways. So I recommend you go back and rewatch the video that we just showed you in our 10 recommendations. Recommendation number 2 was to not listen to the President of the United States because of the misinformation for various reasons that we have received. And finally, the overall recommendation is, even with antibodies, to continue to follow protocols. Washing your hands, wearing your mask in respect for Josie to other people, even though she knows she's not transmitting COVID-19 now. The science and the study is continuing of how long your antibodies will be valid. That is unknown. Dr. Grossman has been incredibly clear to us. He considers himself an N1 patient, and he is a study of 1, and now there's studies of 10, and now there's studies of thousands, etc., and so on. It is an ongoing process. But do not spread myth, because you're creating dangerous misinformation. Don't be the President of the United States, is our conclusion. Go back and rewatch the video. Any final thoughts about where we're at and this long process?
Well, all I know is one of the big takeaways that we, which were illuminated in that video, is Dr. Grossman says, that I can now go and hug my mom. So that's a great thing, and it means that I can go and hang out with my little niece and nephew and get some sun and hang out in my brother's pool. Geez, I've been missing being in a swimming pool. And trust me, I've been invited to many pool parties, Al, okay? But as a responsible, citizen, I have stayed home. And he also recommended that once you once you test positive for the antibodies, that it's a smart thing to do to continue testing for the antibodies every month. He says that he does that for himself because, again, being that N1 patient, he doesn't know exactly how long those antibodies stay in our system and whether or not that means that we will be immune to a reinfection. So, keeping that and being mindful for myself, I know that I was very diligent about how, my sanitation and my practice. So to be the one who was positive for COVID, this is very relieving, I will say that.
It's one final opportunity to say, from everybody at Happening Out Television Network, we've tried to be so diligent on the information that we're providing the LGBT community. Napoleon is different than Al. Al is different from Josie. The rest of production and host will soon find out themselves in terms of antibody test. And it's one last opportunity for us to say the ultimate impact of everything that we are talking about is the loss of our host and friend, Ron Brunensky. Through this entire process of the news that we give you tonight, one final time for sure, we mention his name and his loss, and that he will be remembered to the loss of COVID-19. So good evening again, America. It is 7 p.m. Monday, May 11th, 2020, and it is time to queer up the news. We are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your stories that we're going to tell tonight on Q News Tonight. Tonight on the world's first live daily queer evening news show.
Tonight's news about the gay community and the news from an LGBTQ perspective. Are our gay stories important to you? In headlines, politics, entertainment, gay culture, travel, religion, and more. Reported by respected anchors.
Out of the closet and into the headlines on Q News Tonight. Well, good evening again, America. Thank you for joining Q News Tonight. We are live, so anything can happen. And when you have both Napoleon Plays and Chef Josie on set, oh, good Lord, fasten your seatbelts. Tonight, we bring you the news of and a perspective from the LGBT community. Be sure and stay tuned as we bring you some amazingly good news stories, even despite coronavirus pandemic.
Our LGBTQ television network supports the live broadcast of Sunshine Cathedral's Sunday church service, the world's most popular LGBTQ queer religious broadcast.
Everyone here at Happening Out Television Network wondered if the LGBT community would continue to support gay media during the pandemic crisis. Our April 2020 results for Happening Out were amazing.
More than 514,000 watched our LGBTQ shows in YouTube TV, and more than 1.7 million watched our LGBTQ shows in Facebook TV.
Combined with one of the most visits of any LGBTQ website in the world, currently ranked number 10,298 out of 900 million, and 100 times more traffic than Florida's number 2 LGBTQ website, we are now the number 1 LGBT media platform on the planet, touching more of our LGBTQ community than anyone else. Thank you for your growing support.
Well, as you know, I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and this is my co-guest anchor tonight. Never have done this before, Chef Josie.
Yes, I'm looking forward to sharing with our viewers about, what's happening in Uganda. With our LGBT brothers and sisters.
And my anchor partner, Napoleon Plays.
That's right, and I think for the first time on Q News Tonight, we are discussing a visual artist, Dali. Stay tuned for more.
Well, let's catch up on all of the news surrounding COVID-19 with our quarantine quickies. The first story tonight is our daily reporting on the coronavirus facts. Now remember, in our reporting, based on the standard 7% population rule of the LGBT community, we report on cases. First, the LGBT community worldwide tonight is reporting 295,000 LGBT individuals have contracted coronavirus. In the United States, in the LGBT community, it is now almost 96,000. Worldwide, the total number of cases is 4.2 million, and in the United States, we are crossing 1,370,000. Remember, the USA is only 4.4% of the world's population, and we now account for 32.4% of all of the cases in the world, a percentage slightly lower today. Now we report on deaths. In the LGBT community worldwide, we report that we are about to cross 20,000 deaths. In the United States, we're at 5,600. Worldwide death total now is about to cross 285,000, and in the United States, we're about to cross 81,000 deaths. Again, remember, the USA is 4.4% of the world's population, and now we amount to 28.4% of all of the world's deaths, a percentage that is higher today. President Trump and Vice President Pence have had a lot of ridiculous things to say about testing. We put some of them together. Watch this.
Importantly, anybody right now and yesterday, anybody that needs a test gets a test. They're there. They have the tests. And the tests are beautiful. Anybody that needs a test gets a test.
So when you said 4 million tests 7 weeks ago, you were just talking about tests being sent out, not actually being completed? I'm a little confused.
John, I think they're precisely correct that in my first week on this job, we were informed that HHS, I believe IDT was the vendor, Admiral Gerard, that had distributed 1 million, was distributing another 4 million, and we believe they did. But again, those were tests that, frankly, but for the president's leadership, we'd still be waiting on those tests to be done in many cases.
Today, we report that there have been 9 million and nearly 500,000 tests. And that sounds like a lot. Today at the White House briefing, there were 2 giant signs on the White House that said leading the world in testing. That is a lie. It is because with 328 million Americans, we have only tested 2.8% of our population. It is actually very small. 10% of testing is recommended for reopening. Despite Trump and Pence, testing and contact source tracing is the #1 solution to pandemic. And Q News tonight continues to recognize our Hall of Fame of the top states in testing in America. Today, #3 is North Dakota, testing 5.9% of their population. #2 is New York, and #1 continues to be led by Rhode Island. Unfortunately, Q News tonight also recognizes our Hall of Shame, states doing the absolute worst job in testing, and that includes #5, Texas, at just 1.77%, #4, Ohio, #3, Maine, #2, South Carolina. It seems like many of those are going to be battleground states. And #1, poor Puerto Rico, who has basically stopped testing on the island at just 0.38%.
Quarantine quickies. South Dakota Sioux Tribe refuses to take down COVID-19 checkpoints that governor says are illegal. We've got a video for you. Watch this.
Showdown in South Dakota, where the governor threatening legal action if a pair of Native American tribes don't remove road checkpoints designed to prevent the spread of coronavirus on tribal land. The tribes are rejecting the governor's ultimatum, setting the stage for a legal battle over who has jurisdiction on tribal land. Sarah Seidner joins us now from Timber Lake, South Dakota. Sarah, what are you hearing?
Yeah, Fred, look, they've got 9 of these checkpoints set up, the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe, this one in Timber Lake, South Dakota. And, just take a look. They've got 4 or 5 people who come out here. They are wearing the appropriate gear to make sure people know that they are the policing agency here. And they stop the cars. They ask them a bunch of questions, ask them whether or not, we went through this too, by the way, when we came up, whether or not they came from a place that has COVID cases, whether it's a hot spot, their name, name, their telephone number. The reason for these particular checkpoints, and there are 9 of them in this area that are about 324 miles around.
The Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe in South Dakota is refusing to end coronavirus checkpoints declared illegal by the state's governor, saying they are the best tool they have to stop the virus from spreading. Governor Kristi Noem sent letters Friday to the leaders of the Oglala Sioux Tribe and the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribes demanding that the checkpoints along the U.S. and state highways through tribal land be removed.
Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe Chairman Harold Frazier told CNN that the main purpose of the checkpoints set up by the tribe is to monitor and try to track coronavirus if it should ever come into tribal lands. Quote, "We want to ensure that people coming from hotspots or highly affected areas, we ask them to go around our land." That's what Frazier said. And when asked about Noem's request about the tribe take down the checkpoints as they, quote, interfere with regulating traffic on U.S. and state highways, Frazier said that they're going to stay put.
We've seen a lot of stories in the news, or at least I know I have, where leaders of Native American tribes are particularly concerned about this, not just because they're more vulnerable, but that they're more vulnerable people. Their leaders, their elderly, are the ones that are going to be exposed. And particularly in those tribes, that's where the elderly carry the knowledge, where they're seen as being sacred. And so for the government to just declare that they're not supposed to do what is for their best health is appalling.
And the Supreme Court has repeatedly ruled that the tribes have sovereignty of their own land. So I suspect the governor is going to lose this case in South Dakota.
Yeah, I believe that's true too.
We are going to continue in quarantine quickies.
Yeah, quarantine quickies. Elon Musk threatens to pull Tesla production from California over COVID-19 measures. We've prepared a video. Watch this.
Let me tell you, though, about what took place over the weekend, because it became a massive, massive debate. On Saturday, Elon Musk said the company was preparing to file a lawsuit, this against Alameda County, California, over pandemic-related restrictions. Here's what he tweeted. He said, quote, "Frankly, this is the final straw. Tesla will now move its HQ and future programs to Texas, Nevada, where immediately. If we even retain the Fremont manufacturing activity at all, it will be dependent on how Tesla is treated in the future. Tesla is the last car maker left in CA in California."
Tesla filed suit Saturday night against Alameda County, California, after local officials there refused to let the company reopen its Fremont factory. In a series of tweets earlier Saturday, Tesla CEO Elon Musk also threatened to move the company's headquarters to Texas or Nevada, where shelter-in-place rules are less restrictive. Quote, "Frankly, this is the final straw. Tesla will now move its HQ and future programs to Texas, Nevada immediate." That's what Musk tweeted.
The lawsuit follows months of Musk tweeting debunked and controversial coronavirus claims and railing against stay-at-home orders, often contrary to health officials' guidance. Musk said in his tweet, quote, "This has been a collaborative, good faith effort to develop and implement a safety plan that allows for reopening while protecting the health and well-being of the thousands of employees who travel to and from work at Tesla's factory." The Alameda Health Department responded on Saturday.
Musk said, quote, "Tesla is filing a lawsuit against Alameda County immediately. The unelected and ignorant interim health officer of Alameda is acting contrary to the governor, the president, our constitutional freedoms, and just plain common sense. At least one California assemblywoman wasn't having it. Lorena Gonzalez, who represents San Diego, tweeted, 'Fuck Elon Musk.' Republican Senator Ted Cruz of Texas tweeted Saturday, quote, 'Come to Texas. We would welcome Tesla HQ in Texas. We love jobs, and Texans very much want to open up and get back to work while still staying safe and following sound science. We make lots of cars and trucks in Texas, and we'd love more.'"
All right.
Sounds like Texas.
I'm not anti-billionaires at all,
Sure.
but this Elon Musk is sounding like a bully billionaire, and I was thinking to myself as we're doing this story, where's Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders when we need them? You know,
Well, they've been eliminated from the race, so they're kind of sitting quietly on the sideline.
That doesn't mean that they're not involved. And I mean, we need every Democrat, every sane person that's possible to understand how to get this dictator out of office, if that's even possible.
let's continue our quarantine quickies.
Quarantine quickies. Fauci enters quarantine after most secure facility in the world, the White House, has mass COVID-19 exposure. Dr. Anthony Fauci, the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases and member of the White House's coronavirus task force, will begin a modified quarantine after making a low-risk contact with the White House staffer who tested positive for the novel coronavirus. He is not doing a full quarantine like Dr. Stephen Hahn, the commissioner of the Food and Drug Administration.
Hahn came into contact with an individual who tested positive for coronavirus, an FDA official confirmed. Dr. Robert Redfield, the director of the Center of Disease Control and Prevention, will self-quarantine for 2 weeks after he was exposed to a person at the White House who tested positive for COVID-19, a CDC spokesperson confirmed.
Officials will not identify the person to whom Hahn and Redfield were exposed. However, Katie Miller, the press secretary to Vice President Mike Pence, tested positive on Friday. She is known to often be in the White House coronavirus task force meetings. It was asked this afternoon repeatedly if the White House cannot control coronavirus access in the White House, one of the most secure office locations in the world, how can Main Street USA do it? There wasn't a very good answer.
I think, though, what we're seeing is the complete irresponsibility in the inability to actually follow the recommendations that the CDC is putting out. If you can't follow the CDC guidelines in your own office and as a leader set the example for the rest of the Americans, then how do we expect anyone in this country to actually, adhere to the new rules?
I mean, calling him a leader at this point seems like you're just fumbling your words, because while he might have technically been elected by Russia, he's definitely not leading our country to any sort of levels of safety or anything that follows science. I mean, we're supposed to have a separation of church and state, and it feels more like we're going to be praying to God with our thoughts and prayers to get this solved than anything else.
It's interesting to both of your observations. Just today, on May 11th, did they implement a policy that you must wear a mask in the White House? Just today. We end our quarantine quickies by moving on a segment called Coronavirus Good News. After we finish quarantine quickies, we like to lighten it up a little. We've reported all of the statistics and all of the facts for the day, but now we want to report on things that make us smile some. And so that's what we're going to do.
Coronavirus Good News. Hardworking moms making a huge difference during the coronavirus. Mother's Day in pandemic had an entirely new meaning this year. Social isolation, fear of sickness, schools closed, job security, and simply paying the bills were top of mind for moms in 2020. So you can imagine that Mother's Day came just in the nick of time. Amazing tributes came in this week that remind us all of what is really important. And when LGBTQ people can frequently be separated from family, this Mother's Day makes Q News Tonight Coronavirus Good News. Watch this.
And for mom Nicole Q, who works at a nursing facility, she also knew exactly what she needed to do.
Because I work with an elderly population, I knew that people were going to be at home and I'm able to get the supplies.
She put out a Facebook post asking to pair volunteers to grocery shop.
I was inundated with emails of people saying I can get groceries, I can get prescriptions. Please just let us know what you need.
Being a mom on this Mother's Day is different than past years.
Well, tonight at Q News Tonight, we would like to thank our set designer, Concepto Modern Living, here in Fort Lauderdale, for making this set in this living museum possible.
We're broadcasting from our studio set in the middle of the World AIDS Museum and Education Center. The museum is in, as Al said, Wilton Manors in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
We joke we're coming from the gayest place on planet Earth.
And you definitely qualify.
Yeah, it's funny because I was sitting with my legs crossed before and she was just spreading it before. Tonight we bring you a mini sample of Q's Q&A on coronavirus.
And for mom Nicole Q, who works at a nursing facility, she also knew exactly.
We have experts to answer your questions that need to be answered. We invite you to join our special Facebook group to ask all of your questions. Tonight, we give you some examples of questions viewers are asking, and on Thursday, we have medical experts to help with the answers, and I know how you have a lot of questions.
And we, for sure, are going to welcome back Dr. Howard Grossman that you saw at the top of the shows, who administered the antibody test for Napoleon, myself, and Josie. Our sample question tonight, a viewer asked, what is the first thing you will do once quarantine ends?
I mean, isolation is about to be ending here in Florida, and I'm probably still going to stay quarantined because I'm listening to science and not what our so-called leaders are telling us. So when it's safe, I plan on going to the beach every day and just floating. But until it's actually safe, I will probably be social distancing just for everyone's sake.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm going to echo what Napoleon is saying. I've already started to create a three-phrase reintroduction plan for myself, and that's just because, after being 50 days in quarantine, my goal is not to be reinfected, okay? It's to do this safely, open my business safely, phase my business into full, a full opening, which I foresee it happening, maybe a year from now.
The stuff that I've read on social media of if you were able to be out at the end of quarantine, of running down Wilton Drive completely naked, those rumors in social media are not true?
No, that was Marcy you were hearing about.
So your wife will be doing this. Got it.
All right, let's move into some of our news topics tonight, called first, Vote 2020. Obama slams the Trump coronavirus response as a chaotic disaster. Before Napoleon tells us about that story, we've prepared a video piece. Watch this.
Tonight, a rare rebuke from former President Barack Obama, condemning the White House for its, quote, anemic and spotty response to the coronavirus pandemic.
It has been an absolute chaotic disaster. When that mindset of what's in it for me and to heck with everybody else, when that mindset is operationalized in our government.
Former President Barack Obama delivered a blistering critique of the Trump administration's response to the coronavirus crisis, describing it as, quote, an absolute chaotic disaster during a private call Friday night with people who worked for him in the White House and across his administration.
The searing comments offered the starkest assessment yet from the former president about how President Donald Trump and his team have handled the deadly pandemic and why he believes Democrats must rally behind former President Joe Biden to defeat Trump in November. In a 30-minute conversation with members of the Obama Alumni Association, the former president said the response to the corona outbreak served as a critical reminder for why strong government leadership is needed during a global crisis.
The call was intended to encourage former Obama staffers to become more engaged in Biden's presidential campaign. Quote, this election is coming up on every level. It is so important because what we're going to be battling is not just a particular individual or political party. What we are fighting against is these long-term trends in which being selfish, being tribal, being divided, and seeing others as the enemy, that has become a stronger impulse in America.
White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany on Saturday dismissed the criticism from Obama, saying, quote, President Trump's coronavirus response has been unprecedented and saved American lives. Weighing in on the case during the call, Obama said Attorney General William Barr's decision to stop the criminal case against Flynn suggested, quote, the rule of law was at risk in the United States. Before taking office, Obama warned Trump about Flynn and raised questions about his conduct with Russia.
But Obama saved his strongest words for the Trump administration's handling of the coronavirus crisis and its worldview. Quote, it's part of the reason why the response to this global crisis has been so anemic and spotty. It would have been bad even with the best of governments. It has been an absolute chaotic disaster when that mindset of what's in it for me and to heck with everybody else, when that mindset is operationalized in our government.
Obama added, quote, that's why I, by the way, am going to be spending as much time as necessary and campaigning as hard as I can for Joe Biden. Well, Friday night, I guess the former president threw it down.
Yeah.
What do we think about
I'm glad that he did. I want to see him getting out there and getting support for Joe Biden because honestly, it really isn't about Joe Biden. And I know that there's a lot going on in the news with Tara Reade, with allegations proposed against him, with all sorts of things that he's going to be shown as hiding or not being in the scene because of coronavirus. He's isolating. The reality is that it's basically maybe not good versus evil, but neutral versus evil. And we can either try to defend what our country stands for or prove that we're not going to vote that way and that we're unpatriotic.
I think it's really important in this moment that our leaders, past and present, are being vocal. And that's simply what we need to see. We need to see everyone who has a platform speaking out and speaking up, because the world right now is looking for leaders. Our country is looking for leaders, and we're clearly not getting that from the White House.
It'd be great if we saw Bush come out and support Joe Biden simply because the alternative is more of a dictatorship staying in power.
Well, that would be an interesting moment. Unlikely, but it would be very interesting. We continue by queuing up the world. Very disturbing story here about queer homeless people, Ugandans, brutally beaten by a mayor in one of Uganda's cities before being falsely arrested under COVID-19 laws. We've prepared a video package, and we prepare you. It is quite intense. Watch this.
There are 23 men and women cowering on the forecourt of a shelter in Uganda. They're young and homeless, and some are sick.
Stupid.
But they are treated with brutality by the authorities because, say human rights groups, they're gay. These pictures, obtained by Sky News, show the mayor of a municipality near the capital, Kampala, beating shelter residents with a 4-foot cane. And he and his officials taunt and interrogate those trembling before them.
According to Britain's Pink News, shivering and scared 23 LGBT plus people sat on the forecourt of a charity-run facility near Kampala, Uganda. A municipal mayor carries a 4-foot cane as he paces in front of them before beginning to brutally whip and interrogate them, tying them up and marching them through the streets, locals jeering as they walk across the dirt path.
Harrowing footage, partially what you just saw, has emerged of a March 29 raid which led to the arrest of 19 of those LGBT plus Ugandans, part of a slew, activists say, of targeted attacks by law enforcement against the community. Authorities did not charge the group with the country's barbaric anti-LGBTQ plus laws. Instead, they were charged with disobeying coronavirus regulations because of social distancing.
It's all seemingly part of a new playbook of autocratic authorities exploiting the pandemic to hastily push authoritarian laws and persecute marginalized and vulnerable groups. As much as the coronavirus crisis has brought the world to a juddering halt, activists say the scant opposition to emergency measures being used to persecute LGBT people will be cataclysmic.
Homeless LGBT plus forced to walk through Uganda streets, chained and bruised as, quote, where did they come from? Tell me what you were using condoms for. An unseen interrogator then quizzes a resident, quote, who are you having sex with? I wasn't having sex with anyone, he responded. Again, against a cackle of laughter from officials, the interrogator added, quote, tell us who you were having sex with.
The sheltered occupants, chained and bound to one another in a snaking line, are then walked through Kampala. Locals hurl homophobic taunts against them from afar. We would like to see their husbands who rented them such a big house, one says. Another yells, our daughters are not married. Why don't you marry them instead of engaging in homosexuality?
Defendant's lawyer says charges are there to teach LGBT people a lesson. This horrific incident is going on in 2020 with much of America's LGBTQ community not voicing dramatic opposition to Uganda and general policies seen in Africa.
It's shocking here, honestly. We've talked about Africa and the continent's response to LGBT rights and human rights, just humanity rights. Uganda is at the absolute top of the list.
We've spoken of Kampala because they are a space where a lot of LGBTQ people go and they form their own village, as we've seen here, because they are escaping from other countries. And it's unfortunate. We reported a story not too long ago about a woman that was raped because she was a lesbian, and that is not uncommon in this location. I hope there's not more stories coming up.
Yeah, you know, there's an attack on our community right now, and we're seeing the trend all over the world. Yeah. And here, this story is disheartening. Just to think about our LGBT brothers and sisters who are unsafe in this moment and during this crisis, which really just complicates the entire situation. You know, I'm sending some positive vibes out into the world today.
It's interesting to me that this is going on in Africa, but it does surprise me that there is not more outrage being expressed in our American, our Canadian LGBT communities about what's happening in Africa in general and Uganda very specifically. Very, very tough. We cue up the USA by reporting another tough story about a homophobic babysitter who slaps a small boy for dancing like a gay-ass bitch in this disgusting video. We've got a portion of it. We prepare you. It's tough. Watch this.
You don't do that shit. Fuck wrong with you, gay-ass bitch.
All that stuff that happened, it just caught me off guard because I didn't find out about it till 2 or 3 days after the video was made. You know, my son's godmom and my uncle, my best friend, who is their Uncle Lily, you know, they were the two who told me about this, and it really hit me. And at the moment, I was stuck. I didn't know what to do because I was scared, but then I had to really come to my senses. Like, I was not home at the time, you know, I wasn't aware. My son never told me anything about this, but I just want to let y'all know, yeah, it is being handled, and people are being, you know, they're involved. The law is involved, and it's just something I got to deal with.
The mother has spoken out after a video did go viral of her son being hit for dancing, quote unquote, gay by his babysitter. The clip of the young boy being hit for learning a popular TikTok dance routine alongside his sister initially was posted on Instagram stories and has racked up more than 8 million views on Twitter.
Before slapping the child, the woman behind the camera can be heard saying, "You don't do that shit. Fucking wrong with you, gay-ass bitch." While thousands of homophobes online rushed to praise the decision to hit the child. The family involved in the clip have spoken out. In a follow-up video with the boy, Brandon, his mother, who has not been identified publicly, revealed that the person responsible for hitting him was a babysitter who has since been reported to the police.
She explained, quote, "I am his mother, and I am not the one who was behind the camera. Everybody thinks it's me and was saying negative things about me, but I'm not worried about that. My son is fine, and he is being loved right. I didn't find out what happened until 2 or 3 days after the video was made. I will love him whether he's gay or not."
The most disgusting thing that's happening here to me is that it was clearly planned out because she had this going on. It was a viral video on multiple different social media platforms. And so the babysitter knew to turn on the camera, obviously posted a whole little thing about it in words, and then waited for him to dance before responding the way that she did. So clearly it was premeditated because she had the whole thing mapped out and wanted this to be a sensation.
This is institutional discrimination against an LGBTQ plus individual, because the response is that if he's a little effeminate, there's no sexuality going on here at all, but if he acts a little effeminate, there is the response. And that's how our society has held the LGBT community back for decades, certainly since Stonewall. And drawing attention and putting light on this video may seem like not an important issue, but at a show like Q News Tonight, it's extremely important to show America and the world what people do in various insidious ways to discriminate against community. And it starts at a young child's age.
Right after Mother's Day, we see
And
this.
and I think that there's a lot of factors here that are playing a part in that. You know, education is one, parenting. That's there looks like, you know, there's a socioeconomic presence. We're talking, these are the challenges of people in this moment who are faced with challenges that are compounded because of this crisis. And I'm not giving any passes to the person, making the video, but it's again very sad that our children, whether they're gay or straight or whatever, undecided, that they're being subjected to this kind of programming.
Well, let's move out of our main stories tonight and let's try to lighten it up a little.
Okay.
So we're going to end tonight's broadcast with what we call the Big Finish, short story mentions of LGBTQ news or news with a gay perspective. Can you two handle gay perspective? Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
So here we go. First on Q News Tonight's The Big Finish. Headline 1. Sam Smith says he cannot wait for McDonald's and a gay bar run when quarantine ends.
Well, Sam Smith is non-gender identified, so it would be they. I know that can be difficult, especially in 2020, to figure that out. But I guess they're not a bottom, because who goes to McDonald's first and then goes on a gay bar run? That does not make any sense. Come on, Sam Smith, what's with you?
Well, I can tell that you're the gay one at the table, because I was thinking they should just know McDonald's has been open this entire time. And if you come and visit Wilton Manors, gay bar runs will be very easy to do, because all of the bars and restaurants will soon be open for takeout only.
That's right. We are often asked the vulgar question, do you spit or swallow? Well, America, I can tell you that of these two locations, one answer is to spit and the other is to swallow. And the results of the choice might surprise you.
You mean the gay bar at McDonald's, not me and Josie in this conversation. Just to be clear.
Yes, clear. All right, the Big Finish. Happy trails to Little Richard, the man who was denied talking about gay men's good booty. Tutti frutti, that was the next line. He's dead at 87.
Womp bampa doom bampa womp bamboo. And that's the end of the signs of any of this that I can know. Apparently the lyrics are tutti frutti, good booty. If it don't fit, don't force it. You can grease it, make it easy.
My God, can you believe 1950s?
I can't, because if anyone could understand those lyrics, I listened to the song for like 45 minutes trying to hear those words, and I couldn't understand anything else.
That's only because you're horny.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can see that you guys are the gay ones at the table, because this one went right over my head. So good booty, good.
Right. Later in life, Little Richard denounced his homosexuality. A lot of people don't know that as being wrong.
2017.
But I guess since he died of bone cancer, it turns out he was bad to the bone all the way to the very end. The Big Finish. Happy trails to gay icon Roy Horn, who inspired Tiger King's Joe Exotic. He's dead now at age 75 of COVID-19.
You know, until a month ago, Roy Horn was probably more known as the Vegas fan favorite show Siegfried and Roy. Perhaps more prominently than the Tiger, the duo was often speculated to be gay. Maybe that's why he spent his life sticking his head into a giant pussy, the biggest in the world, at least until Mitch McConnell in 2016.
All right. Well,
we're still gay.
Yeah, still the gayest ones at the table.
That's
That's for sure. But I mean, just think about it. Roy Horn, his whole entire life, now being reduced to the inspiration of Tiger King, Joe Exotic.
I am so damn upset about this news, America. In 1999, I bet $3,000 in Las Vegas that he was going to be mauled to death by one of his tigers. And I have been really eyeing a very nice dining room set recently. The big finish. No context Monday. Mike Pence could reasonably be charged with murder if Trump dies of coronavirus.
Well, that would make Mike Pence the first white man of the century to both be charged with murder and get a national holiday named after him. But don't get too excited. We aren't even sure if reptilians can get corona. We'll see.
Oh my God. Well, I can say this is for my wife. I know I will bring her into this, but a dream is a wish your heart makes. And my heart is wishing.
Yeah. If this happened and he got charged, it would be by far the most reasonable action associated with the White House since January 20, 2017. The big finish. Happy 116th birthday to renowned painter and orgy king, Salvador Dali.
The daddy of surrealism was fascinated with sadomasochism. Like me as a child, he would throw himself down staircases and explain that he thought the pain was immense, but worthwhile. That's a true story for me, by the way. I know my mom's shaking her head yes around the corner. But despite this, I think he actually has a lot more in common with you, Al. Not only did he grow up being shown pictures of people with advanced venereal diseases, but he always boasted, quote, "I'm impotent. You've got to be impotent to be a great painter, and I imagine you're a great painter." And in fact, he even came to associate sex with decay, just like everyone you've ever been with.
Josie's going to come to my defense. I know she is.
Well, actually, I'm not getting involved.
Like his lover said afterwards.
Listen, guys, I've always been a huge fan of Salvador Dali. And a matter of fact, the expression of the creative, the fantasy behind it all. But I think I'm an even bigger fan now that I know he's the orgy king.
Yeah, I'm trying to squeeze a little tear from Napoleon's comment, but unfortunately I forgot that I had my tear ducts removed. It has been rumored he hosted these orgies in Barcelona to satiate his wife's sexual appetite long enough for her to sit still. Personally, I just think it is because he wanted something a little bit thicker than a brush in between his fingers. On the big finish, on this day in 2000, India's population officially reaches 1 billion.
I've said this on the show before. I'm curious to see maybe like 4 out of 5 people naked. And while that 5th person seems to be every person on the production set, I really have to go back to India because the first time I clearly did not see 4 out of 5 of 1 billion people naked, and that was in 2009. So it looked like a return trip is in order.
Making friends and influencing people.
That's right. Ooh.
Wow, the home of curry sounds like a lot of curry. Unfortunately, it sounds like the condoms they're selling there are really There are none.
India became, wait, that just washed over me. That's actually a pretty good joke.
I'm a chef, guys, okay? Give it to me.
Right. India became the 2nd country to reach this mark less than 200 years after the world's population reached 1 billion for the first time. The explosion of population in the last 200 years is not a coincidence. Advancements in medicine and how we understand our bodies have led to gigantic leaps forward in life expectancy, allowing more people to exist at the same time instead of dying young. I was going to insert a Napoleon joke here.
That's not cool. I'm negative for the antibodies.
So when you see someone online mocking the measles as harmless, when it killed millions before a vaccine, a miracle cure it was hailed at the time, no, it is only ignorance. When you have people who wholesale rail against the use of vaccines because they may cause autism, they don't, by the way, when the other option is accepting tens of millions of childhood deaths globally every year, tens of millions died of Spanish flu, using similar language to those now protesting against COVID-19 safety measures. People who say it was fine back then don't know what the life expectancy the world over in the world that has doubled in the last 2 centuries. Or if they do, or if they think that, they are evil in choosing money over human life. It is healthy to question science, but science itself demands rigorous examination and exploration to reach conclusion. It is a process I model in my own life. However, when the conclusion is reached, the answer is to not ignore it because it doesn't fit our narrative. I encourage the gay community not to set the bar as low as the White House does.
That's it for today's news for the LGBTQ community on the world's first daily LGBTQ evening news show.
Remember, if it's important to the LGBTQ community, it is important to Q News Tonight. But you must help us. Click subscribe on your YouTube and share this news.
We are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. And this is the only source of live LGBTQ news in the entire world. Your community needs your support.
You are not alone.
We will get through this crisis.
And we are here with you. And this is Q News Tonight. So thank you for joining us. I'm Al Ferguson, and on behalf of my guest host, you did a great job, Chef Josie, and Napoleon Plays, we will see you daily and tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Good night.